Why did she feel it again? That quiet, crawling sense that the night sky was about to betray her. The 787 cut a steady line through the darkness, engines humming like a lullaby against the velvet black. At 38,000 feet, silence ruled beyond the fuselage. Inside, though, life unfolded in fragments of ordinary. A toddler squirming in her mother's tired arms, a businessman typing furiously as though the world depended on his emails, a young couple whispering about their honeymoon in New York. 200 lives, oblivious to the weight of the sky pressing down around them. To them it was just another flight, routine, forgettable. But Captain Mitchell never trusted routine. Her hands hovered lightly over the controls, fingers brushing the switches like a pianist rehearsing chords she already knew by heart. Her uniform was crisp, her posture straight, but it wasn't the fabric or the bars on her shoulders that carried weight. It was her eyes. They were sharp, restless, alive with the awareness of someone who had seen too much sky turn hostile too quickly. At 41 carried more than flight hours. She carried survival. Years earlier, in another cockpit under another name, she had flown F-16s through Afghan dust storms and Iraqi nights. She had threaded canyons under missile fire. She had lived with tracer rounds painting streaks of fire across her canopy. Her call sign, Falcon 21, was once whispered with respect, even awe by those who flew beside her. But that was a lifetime ago. Or at least she wanted to believe it was. Some things never leave you. They sit under your skin like scars no one sees, whispering warnings when the world pretends to be calm. Her co-pilot Alex leaned back and stretched, his youth and inexperience showing in the way he trusted the instruments without question. He smiled, half casual, half nervous. "You're wound tight tonight, Captain. Sometimes a flight is just a flight, you know." His lips twitched, but her voice was flat, steady. "And sometimes it is." She didn't elaborate and Alex didn't push. Everyone at the airline knew her reputation. Unflappable, steady in turbulence, the one pilot you wanted when the world turned upside down. Still, he wondered if combat had made her too cautious, too wary of shadows that weren't there. Then it came. At first, a muffled thump, subtle enough to be ignored, like a bag shifting in the cargo hold. But then the alarms followed. Shrill, piercing, urgent. Red and amber lights erupted across the panel like fireworks gone wrong. His eyes snapped to the pressurization gauges. The numbers were climbing too fast. "Mask on," she barked, already pulling hers into place. Alex fumbled, startled, but obeyed, his breathing quick through the hiss of rubber and oxygen. Behind them, overhead compartments rattled as the plane jolted violently. Screams erupted in the cabin as oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling like dangling lifelines. "Cabin depressurization," said, her voice clipped, controlled. "We're descending, controlled, level at 10,000. Her hands flew over the controls, guiding the massive jet into a steep but measured dive. The engines roared, pressing passengers into their seats as the aircraft angled downward. Some clawed at armrests, white-knuckled. Others sobbed into their masks, their breaths shallow with panic. In the cockpit, Alex's voice cracked. "We're losing comms, electricals cutting out." Static hissed from the radios, tried hailing ATC. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Flight 227, experiencing rapid depressurization, requesting immediate clearance." The radio sputtered, then died into white noise. Alex swore under his breath, "We're blind." Didn't flinch. Blind was bad. Blind with 200 souls was worse, but panic never fixed airplanes. She leaned forward, recalculating descent rates in her head. Too steep and the jet would rip itself apart. Too shallow and her passengers would pass out before reaching breathable air. Every second was a razor's edge. "Set manual nav," she ordered. Alex hesitated. "Manual as in?" "Charts and compass. If systems don't come back, that's all we've got." His hands shook as he dug out laminated maps. It felt absurd in a cockpit built for the 21st century, but nothing about tonight was ordinary. Another violent jolt cut the thought short. The jet dropped, passengers screaming as they were thrown against, drinks spilled, lights flickered. A baby's cry pierced the chaos. "How are you so calm?" Alex whispered, his voice muffled through the mask. "Because panic doesn't fix airplanes." Her tone was steady, but inside her chest, something churned. This wasn't combat. In combat, at least you knew who the enemy was. Here, the enemy was the very machine she commanded. She gripped the yoke, forcing the nose level. And in that moment, faces flashed in her mind. The toddler, the young couple, the businessman, none of them knew her past. None of them knew she had once been Falcon 21. To them, she was just another uniform. But to her, their lives were a mission, and failure wasn't an option. If systems kept failing, she'd lose navigation completely. No radio meant ATC would see only a plane in distress diving over American skies. And protocol was brutal. Unresponsive airliners were treated as potential threats. The thought cut deep. What if her own Air Force scrambled jets to intercept her? She swallowed hard. There was still one card she hadn't played, one she had promised herself she would never touch again. Her hand brushed the faint outline in her jacket pocket, a small leather pouch. Inside lay a code, a memory, a call sign she'd buried with her past life. Falcon 21. Her chest tightened. To use it would mean admitting she needed them again, the Air Force she had left behind. It would mean dragging the past into the cockpit of this fragile, failing jet. Behind her, passengers shouted in panic. A man cried out, muffled through his mask. Another prayed aloud, the moaned like a wounded animal. Closed her eyes, steadying her breath. When she opened them again, resolve burned where fear had lived. "Alex," she said firmly, "hold her steady. I have one more option." He turned to her, desperate. "What option?" "The kind you don't learn in flight school." And with that, her fingers slipped into the pocket. The alarm screamed louder, the cabin trembled harder, but in her grip she held a piece of her past, a code that spoke in a language most had forgotten. Falcon 21. For the first time in a decade, she was ready to call. What happens when the very sky mistakes you for a threat? The cockpit was alive with chaos, alarms screaming, red lights pulsing like frantic heartbeats, oxygen masks fogging with each strained breath. Alex's fingers trembled against the throttle, sweat dripping beneath his headset, but his movements were deliberate, precise. Every decision weighed against the impossible. 200 souls strapped into a wounded machine, every second another step toward disaster. "Level at 25, she ordered, voice steady, almost cold. The groaned as if fighting her, hydraulics sluggish, altitude bleeding faster than it should. Hands gripped the yoke with the same strength she once used in combat, coaxing an F-16 through canyons while tracer fire painted the sky. Her knuckles whitened. She couldn't afford to let this bird slip. Not now. Not with lives in her hands. Alex's voice cracked. "She's not responding cleanly. Hydraulics feel." A violent jolt cut him off, slamming both pilots forward into their harnesses. Screams from the cabin bled through the cockpit door, muffled but raw. Fought the yoke, arms straining, jaw clenched, muscles remembering every dogfight, every desperate landing she'd ever pulled from the jaws of death. The nose steadied, barely. Alex gasped through his mask. "Radio's dead again. We've lost them." Static hissed across the panel like white noise, mocking their isolation. Blind deaf alone. Except they weren't, at least not if she dared. Her hand brushed the leather pouch again, her thumb pressing against the ridge of the laminated card inside. Falcon 21. That call sign had been her identity once, her lifeline, her legend. It wasn't just a name. It was recognition, authority, belonging. If she keyed it into the system, there was a chance someone somewhere would hear. But what if no one remembered? What if the system was gone, deactivated by newer generations who saw her as just another relic of wars past? Her heart thudded. If she was wrong, they would remain invisible, a falling star destined to burn out unseen. She shut her eyes just for a beat. In her mind, a desert sky unfolded, Afghanistan 2009. Her squadron scattered, comms jammed, hostile ground fire clawing upward like angry claws. She had been cut off, bleeding fuel, three crippled jets limping in formation behind her. She remembered the silence in her headset, the way fear sat heavy in her gut. But then training had whispered, you improvise, you adapt, you call anyway. She'd punched in her call sign then, voice raw, heart steady, and someone answered. Someone always answered. Her eyes opened. Alex, she said, voice low but firm. Keep her level. Don't fight the controls more than you have to. He shot her a bewildered look. What are you? The kind of thing you don't teach in flight school, she cut in. She pulled the pouch free, sliding out the laminated card. The numbers were burned into her memory. Emergency codes, authentication strings, a back door into the Air Force's encrypted net. A relic few even knew existed anymore. But she did. She keyed the transponder, fingers steady despite the sweat slicking her palms. Numbers tapped in rhythm, her call sign etched into the system like a ghost returning from the dead. Falcon 21. For a long, breathless moment, nothing happened. Just the hiss of oxygen, the groans of metal, the tremor of a wounded jet bleeding altitude. Then ping. A faint, almost imperceptible chirp. The transponder's encrypted beacon fired into the night, invisible to civilian radar but screaming to military ears. Alex stared. What did you just do? I called for help, said quietly, her mask fogged with each controlled breath, in a language only a handful of people still understand. He blinked, disbelief painting his face. And if they don't answer? Her eyes stayed locked on the horizon, steady. They will. When Falcon 21 calls, someone always answers. But inside she felt the sting of doubt. 10 years was a long time. Would anyone remember? Minutes dragged like hours. The cabin had settled into a rhythm of muffled sobs, prayers whispered into masks, children clinging to parents. Fear was heavy in the air, pressing down as hard as gravity. A flight attendant stumbled against the cockpit door, voice shaking as she shouted through. Captain, passengers are panicking. We can't keep them calm much longer. Didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked to the radar scope. Then she saw it. A blip, small, fast, too quick to be civilian. Her chest tightened. We've got company. Alex leaned forward, eyes wide. Is it? Yes, her voice was quiet, steady, certain. The beacon had worked. High above Nevada airspace, two F-22 Raptors banked hard, afterburners igniting as they streaked through the night. Inside their cockpits, displays lit up with the encrypted ping. The lead pilot's breath caught as recognition hit him. Falcon 21, he murmured. The name wasn't just a code. It was a story. A legacy whispered in squadrons, told in quiet corners of hangars. The pilot who once guided 3 crippled jets home under fire. The one who never quit. Command's reply was immediate. Raptor 1, full authority granted. Find her, protect her. The Raptors tilted their wings, diving faster, carving through the night sky. Back in the 787, radar lit with 2 more blips, closing fast. Within minutes, sleek silhouettes sliced across the stars outside the cockpit. Predatory, silent, beautiful. One slid along her left wing, the other her right. Guardians. Gasps erupted in the cabin. Phones lifted, shaky hands snapping photos of the fighters outside. Some passengers cheered, relief flooding in. Others panicked, whispering they were about to be shot down. Inside the cockpit, headset crackled to life. Falcon 21, this is Raptor 1. We have you in sight. Her throat tightened. It had been years since anyone called her that. She keyed the mic, voice low, reverent. Copy Raptor 1. This is Falcon 21. 200 souls on board, systems failing. Request vector guidance. The reply came quick, firm. without hesitation. "Roger that, Falcon 21, we're with you, you're not alone." Relief hit her like a wave. Her chest rose, mask fogging. For the first time that night, hope didn't feel fragile. But she knew hope wasn't enough, not yet. Because the real fight was only beginning. The cabin still trembled, hydraulics bled, alarms screamed, and every second dragged them closer to a landing that might break them all. His grip tightened on the yoke. For the first time in years, Falcon 21 was back, and she would need every ounce of that identity to finish what she started. How much longer could the wounded bird stay in the air before the sky decided enough was enough? The 787 shuddered like a body fighting to breathe. Lights flickered, gauges trembled, oxygen masks swung wildly in the cabin. Headset buzzed faintly, the Raptors, voices a steady rhythm against the chaos. "Falcon 21, adjust heading 070. Maintain controlled descent. We're vectoring you toward." Her reply was clipped, military precise. "Copy 070, descent steady, 200 souls on board." The Raptors flanked her wings like shadows made steel. Through the canopy of the lead fighter, she glimpsed a helmeted head turning toward her, a silent acknowledgement, a reminder she wasn't alone. Beside her, Alex tried to steady his hands, his voice cracked. "Captain, fuel burns not matching charts. We're burning faster, too fast, if we can't reach." Cut him off sharp. Then we find another strip. With Raptors on our wings, we're not flying alone anymore. He swallowed hard, eyes darting to the gauges, then back at her. His face was pale, lips trembling, but he clung to her steadiness like an anchor. And yet, beneath her calm, fear coiled. The hydraulics were bleeding, every adjustment on the yoke resisted by sluggish responses. The radios still flickered with static. And the passengers didn't know how close they were to falling from the sky. In the cabin, fear boiled over. A businessman ripped off his mask, face red as he shouted, "What's happening? Why are there fighter jets outside? Are we being forced down?" A flight attendant braced herself against the swaying aisle, her voice shaking as she tried to calm him. "Sir, sit down immediately. They're here to help." But panic was contagious. Whispers spread, terrorist hijacking, military cover-up. Phones flashed as passengers recorded shaky videos of the Raptors packing them wing to wing. Children sobbed into their mother's arms. A woman clutched her child so tightly it looked painful, whispering prayers into his hair. Back in the cockpit, Alex's voice trembled. "They think we're hijacked. If ATC believes that, those Raptors could." "They won't," she said firmly. He looked at her, desperate. "How can you be so sure?" Her eyes stayed locked on the horizon. "Because they're here, because I called them. Not the airline, not ATC, me." And then she added, almost under her breath, "When Falcon 21 calls, they don't bring missiles. They bring trust." Alex stared at her. Who are you really, Captain?" Her lips pressed tight. She hadn't planned to tell him, not like this, but there was no hiding anymore. "I flew fighters," she said at last, her tone flat, matter of fact. "Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, call sign, Falcon 21. He blinked, stunned. "You were?" "Yes," she didn't let him finish. "And tonight, that's the only reason we're still alive." Silence hung between them, broken only by the hiss of oxygen and the groan of straining metal. Alex let out a shaky laugh, half disbelief, half awe. "And you never mentioned it." "Didn't think it mattered." "It matters now." She didn't answer, because deep inside she knew he was right. Another alarm shrieked across the panel. Hydraulic pressure dipped, the red light pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Alex's eyes widened. Hydraulics are bleeding fast, if they fail completely. Her jaw tightened. "Then we fly her in on instinct." "That's impossible," he whispered. Her gaze cut to him, sharp as steel. So was threading an F-16 through a canyon at night under missile fire. So was guiding 3 crippled jets home. I've done impossible before, Alex. I'll do it again. The conviction in her voice was unshakable. For the first time since the chaos began, Alex's shoulders straightened. He believed her. Outside, the Raptors held formation, their afterburners glowing faintly against the velvet sky. To the passengers, they looked like weapons. They looked like family. Silent brothers and sisters in arms, answering her call when no one else could. Her headset crackled again. Falcon 21, this is Raptor 1. You're drifting right. Correct 3 degrees left. Copy 3 left, she replied, adjusting the yoke with firm, steady hands. The aircraft resisted, sluggish and heavy, but she coaxed it back on course. Still with you, came the reply. Always, that one word wrapped around her like armor. But the truth was merciless. Hydraulics wouldn't last. Fuel was bleeding faster than math allowed. The longer they stayed in the air, the closer they drifted to disaster. Her options were shrinking. At Air Force Base, command screens glowed with radar tracks. Controllers barked orders, phones buzzed, commanders paced. But when the call sign Falcon 21 appeared in encrypted logs, the atmosphere shifted. Younger officers looked puzzled. Veterans straightened, their faces lit with recognition. Falcon 21, one colonel murmured, his voice carried reverence. She's still out there. No one questioned further. Orders flew. Rescue crews scrambled. Tankers prepared. Tonight wasn't just about saving an airliner. It was about answering one of their own. In the cockpit, Alex finally spoke, his voice quiet but raw. Captain, how are you not afraid right now? Lips curved faintly. Who says I'm not? He frowned, confusion written on his face. She added softly, fear's a passenger. You don't let it fly the plane. Her words steadied him. His trembling hand slowed. His breath evened. For the first time, he wasn't just a co-pilot in crisis. He was her wingman. The cabin rattled again, another violent lurch sending gasps and cries through the fuselage. Gritted her teeth, forcing the nose level. She whispered under her breath, not to Alex, not to the passengers, but to the machine itself. Come on, girl, hold together. Don't quit on me now. Outside, the desert stretched infinite beneath them, black and indifferent, broken only by faint glimmers of city lights. Somewhere down there was a runway, a lifeline, and if she could hold this bird together long enough, they might just reach it. Her headset buzzed again. Falcon 21, confirm fuel state. She checked quickly, chest tightening. Burning heavy, estimate short of. A pause then, copy, alternate field is Air Force Base. Runway clear, emergency crews standing by. Vector 080. Her hand tightened on the yoke. Military soil, not civilian. Smaller, closer, but closer meant survival. Her choice. Vector, she said firmly. Roger. Falcon 21, adjusting heading. The Raptors banked, guiding her into the turn. Guardians in the night. In the cabin, passengers felt the shift, saw the lights tilt outside their windows. Some whispered prayers of thanks. Others muttered in dread. The sight of the fighters still divided them. Were they protectors or executioners waiting for orders? A teenage boy leaned toward the glass, eyes wide, voice trembling with awe. They're protecting us, Mom. But a woman across the aisle shook her head, whispering, no, they're waiting to shoot us down. Fear twisted perception. Hope remained fragile. And in the cockpit, knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever happened next, this was the fight of her life. And she had no intention of losing. What happens when every sound in the cockpit tells you the machine beneath you is dying? The trembled again, a deep metallic groan shuddering through its frame. Panels rattled. Warning lights flashed with merciless rhythm. The hydraulic gauge bled lower, its red line pulsing like a heart struggling to beat. His jaw clenched as she steadied the yoke, her muscles taut against the resistance. Hydraulics are dipping fast, Alex said, his voice sharp with panic. His eyes darted between gauges and controls, his breathing shallow through the mask. If they fail completely, Then we improvise, cut him off, her tone steady, clipped. Improvise at this altitude, in this bird, his voice cracked. She turned, eyes locking on his. I've flown jets with engines on fire. I've landed with half my controls gone. You don't stop until the wheels touch the ground. That's the rule. Understand? The conviction in her voice snapped him silent. His trembling slowed, if only a little. But's chest tightened. She didn't say what both of them knew. If hydraulics collapsed completely, this 787 would be nothing but a coffin falling from the sky. Her headset crackled, the Raptors' voices cutting through the noise. Falcon 21, maintain heading 080. Runway 21 is clear. Emergency cruise in position. Her reply was crisp, precise. Copy. Vectoring, fuel burn critical, hydraulics degraded. Falcon 21, we're with you all the way, came the reply, calm and unflinching. The Raptors didn't flinch. They held their tight formation, unshakable despite the turbulence buffeting them. Their wings sliced the night like blades, their afterburners glowing faintly. To the passengers, they looked like hunters circling prey. They were anchors keeping her steady. In the cabin, the mood was breaking. A man in a business suit ripped off his oxygen mask, his face red as he shouted, "We're going to crash. The fighters are here to force us down." "No," a flight attendant shouted back, pushing through the aisle as the plane lurched. "They're here to protect us. Please sit down." But his panic infected others. Voices rose, overlapping in frantic whispers. Phones lifted, recording shaky videos, the glow of screens flickering like desperate beacons. Children cried louder. A woman sobbed into her hands. One teenage boy pressed his face to the window, voice trembling but firm. "They're protecting us. They wouldn't be here if we weren't worth saving." His mother clutched him, her lips pressed to his hair, whispering words she barely believed. Back in the cockpit, Alex whispered, "They're losing faith back there. I can hear it. What if we don't make it?" His eyes stayed forward. "Faith is fragile, but belief we control. If they see us fight, they'll believe." Her words weren't just for him. They were for herself. Another tremor rattled the fuselage. The yoke resisted harder. Her arms ached. Sweat dripped down her temple beneath the mask, but her grip didn't falter. Her headset buzzed again. "Falcon 21, you're drifting high. Correct 2 degrees down." "Copy, 2 down," she answered, forcing the sluggish controls. The aircraft groaned but obeyed. "You're still with us. Keep steady," came the reply. "Still with us, always." The desert stretched infinite beneath them, black and silent, broken only by faint ribbons of highway glowing under the moon. Somewhere down there, lights marked the edge of Air Force Base, a strip of salvation carved into emptiness. But salvation felt far away. Alex's voice cracked again. "At this rate, the gear deployment's going to be dicey. Hydraulics won't hold." "We'll make it," said voice firm. "And if the gear won't drop, then we belly her in." He gaped at her. "That's suicide." "No," she said sharply. "That's survival, done it before. Different bird, same principle." His breath caught. "You've—" She didn't let him finish. "You don't quit until the wheels stop moving. That's the rule, remember that." Her tone was iron, and for the first time Alex believed. Outside, the Raptors adjusted, one pulling slightly ahead to guide her nose, the other sliding back to guard her rear. Silent guardians, unyielding. Her headset crackled again. "Falcon 21 confirms runway clear. Emergency cruise in position. You are cleared for immediate landing priority." She repeated the words with flawless precision. "Falcon 21 cleared priority, runway 21." Her chest rose, breath controlled. This was it. The approach would decide everything. In the cabin, the ground appeared faintly through oval windows, dots of light, scattered towns, desert highways like threads of silver. Gasps rippled. Some passengers sobbed with relief at seeing land. Others panicked harder, whispering that the descent was too steep. A flight attendant braced herself against the swaying aisle, her mask dangling at her chest. "Stay calm. The captain has this," she shouted, her voice trembling but strong enough to cut through the noise. A man clutched a rosary. A woman scribbled a note onto the back of her boarding pass, pressing it into her husband's hand. Children cried softly. Strangers held onto each other. Fear made them family. In the cockpit, Alex's hands hovered uncertainly. "Captain, how do you do this? How are you not?" Afraid, his lips twitched faintly. "Who says I'm not?" He stared at her, searching her face. "Fear rides with us," she added softly, "but it doesn't fly the plane." Her words steadied him again. The desert loomed closer. The runway's faint ribbon of lights flickered on the horizon, glowing like a promise in the darkness. Fire engines lined the strip, red strobes flashing like warnings and prayers all at once. Inhaled slowly, her grip tightened. The fight of her life was about to reach its peak. And she wasn't done yet. What do you tell 200 people when even the plane itself doesn't want to live? The lurched again, its body trembling with each change in air pressure. His grip tightened on the yoke, her arms aching, her knuckles white against the black handles. Every movement felt heavier than the last, like dragging steel through mud. The cockpit filled with the constant screech of alarms, their shrill tones drilling into her ears. Alex checked the gauges, his breath ragged. Hydraulic pressure's bleeding faster than the math says. We're running out of control authority. Her jaw set. We'll hold her as long as we need to. And if we do, his voice cracked, half fear, half plea, then we don't stop fighting until she's on the ground. Her headset buzzed with the steady voice of Raptor 1. Falcon 21, runway 21 confirmed clear. You are 3 minutes to final descent. Maintain heading. You're looking steady. Steady, the word felt almost cruel. Nothing about this bird was steady. The jet groaned like a wounded animal, its systems coughing their last breaths. Still, she keyed the mic with perfect composure. Copy, Raptor 1, 3 minutes out, 200 souls on board. Her voice was steady, her heart was not. Beside her, Alex's hands shook. Gear deployment's going to be dicey, if hydraulics collapse. We improvise, said firmly. You mean belly her in, he swallowed hard. That's survival, she snapped. Her eyes flicked to him, steel cutting through doubt. I've done it before. Different jet, same principle. You ride it till the wheels stop moving. That's the rule. He stared at her like she'd spoken another language, but something in her tone silenced his fear. The Raptors held tight formation, their sleek silhouettes glowing faintly under the moonlight. One slid ahead, its wings tilting in subtle signals only another pilot could read. We're here, follow us, trust the line. Through her canopy glimpsed the faint turn of a helmeted head, a nod, a silent bond. She wasn't flying alone anymore. But inside the cabin, panic was tearing through the passengers. A man ripped at his mask, shouting, "They're here to shoot us down, don't you see? They think we're hijacked." His words cut through the cabin like shrapnel. Others gasped, voices rising in a frantic chorus. Is he right? Are we going to be? No, a flight attendant shouted, bracing herself against the aisle as turbulence jolted her sideways. They're here to protect us. Please stay calm. But calm was fragile. The sight of Raptors packing them felt like safety to some, executioners to others. A child sobbed against her mother's chest. A businessman tried to pull down his bag from the overhead, desperate for some semblance of control, only to be restrained by another attendant. Fear clawed through the rows, merciless. At the front, a flight attendant pressed against the cockpit door, shouting through, "Captain, passengers are losing it back here. They need something." His lips pressed tight. She couldn't leave the controls, couldn't offer words. All she could do was fly. "Tell them this," said, voice clipped. "Their captain is flying and I don't quit." The attendant's eyes glistened as she nodded and turned back into the storm of panic. Alex swallowed hard, his hands trembling over the throttle. They don't believe in us, not anymore. Her eyes stayed locked on the horizon. Then we believe for them. Silence fell between them, heavy but grounding. Her headset buzzed again. Falcon 21, you are cleared straight in. Emergency crews on standby. You are Priority 1. Priority 1. Her chest tightened, 200 lives tethered to her hands. She exhaled slowly. Copy straight in, Priority 1. The runway's faint ribbon of light shimmered in the distance now, growing brighter with every second. Fire engines lined either side, their red strobes flickering like blood poolsing under skin. Rescue crews stood ready, braced for impact. Alex said, his voice breaking, "What if the nose gear doesn't hold?" She didn't look at him. "Then we keep it up as long as possible, ride her till she bleeds every last knot of speed. If she collapses slow. And if she breaks apart, then we give them a chance to walk away." Her words were iron, no hesitation, no indulgence for doubt. But inside, her heart hammered against her ribs. She thought of the faces behind her, the toddler, the young couple, the businessman who didn't know how fragile his laptop really was. She thought of the flight attendants, masks dangling as they fought chaos with trembling hands. 200 souls, 200 stories. And all of them depended on her. The trembled again, alarms shrieked, hydraulic pressure dipped lower, the red light poolsing faster. Alex's hands hovered, pale with fear. She's bleeding out, controls are lagging more. Her lips pressed tight, she'll listen to me. He stared, and if she does. Her eyes didn't move from the horizon. Then I make her. The Raptors' voices cut in again, calm, firm, anchors against the storm. Falcon 21, you're lined up. Begin final descent, you're looking strong. Strong, she almost laughed at the word. The jet was groaning like a dying beast, hydraulics barely holding, gear uncertain. But she didn't correct him. Pilots didn't need brutal truths in moments like this. They needed belief. She exhaled slowly, voice steady as she keyed the mic. Copy, Raptor 1, final descent, 200 souls on board. Her grip on the yoke tightened. The runway grew larger, brighter, blazing like salvation against the desert night. Her muscles screamed. Sweat dripped into her eyes. The alarms howled louder, overlapping into a chorus of panic. And yet her voice when she spoke was calm, controlled. Let's bring them home. What happens when the ground rushes up at you faster than your courage can catch it? The runway lights stretched ahead, glowing like a lifeline carved into the desert. Eyes narrowed, locking onto that ribbon of salvation, her entire body tuned to the trembling yoke in her hands. The groaned under her grip, hydraulics wheezing, the aircraft shuddering as if it knew what was coming. Her headset crackled. Raptor 1's voice was calm, steady, impossibly controlled. Falcon 21, you're lined up. You're looking good. Good, she almost laughed. Nothing about this was good. But belief was sometimes more important than truth. Copy, she replied, her voice clipped. Final approach, 200 souls on board. Beside her, Alex's face was pale, sweat dripping down his temples. Hydraulics won't hold much longer. If we don't drop gear now, we may not get another chance. Do it, ordered. He pulled the lever. The cabin shook with a violent jolt. Metal ground against metal. Warning lights flashed red. The gear indicators flickered, stuttering, 2 green lights faintly glowing, left and right locked. The third, nose gear, stayed dark. Alex's breath hitched. Nose gear, not responding, it's not down. Her heart hammered, a belly landing. She'd done it before, in combat, in jets built for war, stripped for survival. But a 787 with 200 civilians strapped inside. Manual override, she ordered. Alex's hands trembled as he yanked the lever again, harder this time. Another jolt rattled the aircraft, passengers screaming from the cabin as the fuselage trembled. The light flickered, then died again. Nothing. Alex's voice cracked. It's not coming down. The alarms blared louder, shrill tones cutting into their ears. Hands tightened on the yoke, her muscles screaming with every adjustment. Then we keep the nose up as long as possible, she said firmly. We ride her in, bleed every knot of speed. She touches down slow. Alex's voice was barely a whisper, and if she doesn't hold. Her eyes didn't leave the runway. Then we give them a chance to walk away. The runway grew closer, the red strobes of fire trucks lining either side flashing like blood in the night. Emergency crews stood frozen, ready, their eyes locked on the wounded bird coming in hot. In the cabin, panic erupted into chaos. A woman screamed, "We're going to die." Her voice cracked the fragile silence, setting off a chain reaction. Passengers sobbed, clutched hands, prayed aloud. A man gripped his rosary so tightly his knuckles went white. A child buried his face into his father's chest, trembling. A flight attendant shouted above the chaos, her own hands shaking. "Brace, everyone brace, heads down, stay down." The chant began, shaky but relentless. Brace, brace, brace. Back in the cockpit, Alex's breathing quickened. His hands shook so badly the throttle wavered. I can't." She turned sharply, her voice iron. "Yes, you can. You're my wingman now, look at me." He froze, eyes locking on hers. "You don't quit until the wheels stop moving," she said firmly. "Say it." His lips trembled. "You don't quit until the wheels stop moving." Again. "You don't quit until the wheels stop moving." Her eyes stayed locked on his. "Good, now hold her with me." The wheels of the main gear screamed as they struck the runway, sparks flying in bursts of orange as rubber burned against asphalt. The fuselage shuddered violently, a roar like thunder tearing through the cabin. "Hold her," shouted, her arms straining against the yoke. The nose hung in the air, heavy, straining, wanting to drop. Alarms screamed in protest. Alex groaned, his arms trembling as he forced the throttles back. "Hydraulics failing," he shouted. "Then muscle her," she barked. The aircraft skidded, sparks streaking behind the landing gear, the roar deafening. Passengers screamed as their bodies jolted against their restraints, heads snapping forward. The chant of "brace, brace," dissolved into raw cries. The nose dipped lower, lower. "Not yet," whispered through gritted teeth. Sweat poured down her temple, dripping into her mask. Her muscles burned with fire. "Hold, damn it, hold." For a moment it seemed the nose might stay aloft. For a moment, hope burned bright. Then hydraulics died. The yoke gave way. The nose slammed down hard, metal grinding against asphalt with a shriek that echoed across the desert night. Sparks erupted, bright orange bursts carving across the runway like fire trails. The fuselage rattled, jolting violently. Oxygen masks swung wildly. Overhead bins burst open, bags tumbling into the aisle. Passengers screamed, cried, prayed. "Keep her straight," shouted, her voice raw. Her arms fought the useless controls, her body leaning into the skid. The plane screeched along the runway, metal tearing, sparks flying. Fire trucks roared alongside, hoses ready. Rescue crews ran, their boots slamming against asphalt, eyes wide at the spectacle of sparks and flame. The nose scraped deeper, gouging scars into the tarmac. Flames licked briefly along the undercarriage, dying in bursts of sparks. Inside the cockpit, Alex's voice broke. "We're losing her." "Not yet," shouted, her body strained, every muscle screaming. Her heart pounded like war drums. "We're still flying her." The roar grew louder, sparks brighter, the cabin a cacophony of terror. Then suddenly the screech began to soften, the sparks lessened, the shudder slowed. The aircraft was bleeding speed. Screaming, grinding, slowing. This massive body fought against the drag, every inch of metal screaming in protest. But slowly, painfully, agonizingly, it began to stop. The final screech tore through the night, then silence. The jet sat broken on the runway, its nose grinding scars into the tarmac, smoke curling upward into the desert air. Sparks faded into embers. The fire crews surged forward, lights flashing, hoses blasting foam against the undercarriage. Inside, silence, then sobs, then cheers, raw and disbelieving. Passengers wept into each other's arms. A woman clutched her child so tightly it hurt. A man dropped his rosary, tears streaming down his face. Strangers embraced, bonded forever by survival. In the cockpit, Alex's breath came in ragged gasps. He stared ahead, trembling, his hands still frozen on the throttle. We made it. Leaned back in her seat, her body shaking with exhaustion, her mask fogged. Her chest rose and fell heavily. She whispered so soft only she could hear, "We didn't quit." Her headset crackled. Raptor 1's voice broke the silence. Calm, steady. "Falcon 21, runway secure, crews on scene. You brought them home." Her eyes closed. For the first time that night, tears burned behind her lids. But she didn't let them fall, not yet. What do you hear when the screaming stops? For a moment, silence gripped the cabin. It wasn't peace. It was shock. A silence born from lungs emptied by terror, from voices too raw to speak. Then slowly, sound returned, sobs, gasps, the choked laughter of disbelief. Passengers clung to one another, trembling, tears streaking their faces. The sat broken on the runway, its nose into the asphalt, smoke curling upward like the last breath of a giant. Red strobes painted the night as fire trucks swarmed, foam hissing against glowing metal, crews shouting as they encircled the bird. In the cockpit, Alex sat frozen, his hands still locked on the throttle as if letting go would undo the miracle. His chest rose and fell in ragged gulps, his eyes wide, sweat dripping down his neck. He whispered it again as if trying to convince himself. We made it." Exhaled slowly, her grip loosening from the yoke. Her arms ached like they'd been wrenched from their sockets, her body trembling with exhaustion. She closed her eyes for just a beat. The echoes of war lingered there, dogfights, canyon runs, nights she'd cheated death. But this felt different, heavier. Her headset crackled. "Falcon 21, this is Raptor 1, runway secure, evacuation crews on standby, you did it." Her throat tightened. She swallowed hard before replying. "Copy, Raptor 1, bird is down. Request immediate evacuation for 200 souls." "Roger that, crews en route." She reached for the intercom, her voice steadier than her body. "Ladies, and this is your captain. We are down. I repeat, we are down. Remain seated until instructed. Help is coming." In the cabin, relief erupted. Some passengers cheered, others wept harder, clutching hands, whispering prayers of thanks. Strangers hugged like family. For the first time that night, hope wasn't fragile, it was alive. But survival wasn't finished. "Ordered." Alex blinked, still pale. "Evacuation, you think theirs." Smoke curled into the cockpit, faint but sharp. Foam hissed outside, but the acrid sting of burning metal was undeniable. "Yes," said firmly, "get them out." Alex jolted to life, fumbling with his headset before bolting from the seat. The cockpit door swung open, revealing chaos, passengers sobbing, flight attendants shouting, smoke seeping into the cabin. "Move, move," he shouted, guiding them toward the exits. Flight attendants wrestled with the doors, the slides inflating with loud bursts before dropping toward the tarmac. Passengers hesitated, some paralyzed by fear at the sight of jumping from a broken jet. "Go," Alex bellowed, pushing them forward. "Now." One by one, they slid into the night, some screaming, some silent, all scrambling into the arms of waiting rescue crews. Firefighters pulled them clear, shouting for more to come. Back in the cockpit, remained in her seat, scanning gauges, her instincts refusing to let her leave her post. The smell of smoke thickened. The jet groaned as if in pain, but she stayed, her eyes tracing every flickering light. A voice pierced through the haze, "Raptor 1 again. Falcon 21 confirmed crew evacuation. You need to move. Her hand trembled as she pressed the mic. Negative, still monitoring. Last souls not clear. Falcon 21, you've done your job. Get out. Her jaw tightened. Old habits clung like ghosts. A captain left last. A soldier left last. That was the rule. Her chest ached with memory, sand, smoke, the wreckage of a crash site years ago. She walked away while others hadn't. That guilt never left. Tonight she wouldn't repeat it. The cockpit door burst open again. Alex stumbled in, his face flushed, his eyes wild. They're clear, all of them. We've got to go. Her body resisted, muscles rooted to the seat. The yoke still sat before her, lifeless now but familiar. Alex shouted, grabbing her arm. His grip was desperate. We don't quit until the wheels stop moving. You said that. Well, they've stopped. It's over. Her breath hitched. His words pierced the armor she'd built. Slowly, painfully, she released the yoke. Together they stumbled into the cabin, smoke thickening as they moved. The aisles were littered with bags, oxygen masks swinging, windows streaked with soot. But empty. Every seat abandoned. Every soul gone. The slides gaped open like lifelines. Alex pushed her forward. Go. She hesitated at the door, the night air whipping against her face. For a moment she looked back at the cockpit, the place where Falcon 21 had returned, the place where she'd carried them home. Then she jumped. The slide burned her hands, her body slamming into the tarmac before rescue crews grabbed her arms, hauling her clear. Fire trucks hissed foam behind her, crews shouting, lights flashing. The wounded bird hissed smoke, but it had done its duty. On the tarmac, passengers huddled together, shivering in blankets handed out by rescue teams. Some cried, some prayed, some stared at as if she weren't human, as if she were something beyond. A child broke free from his mother's arms, running toward her. His tiny arms wrapped around her legs, his voice muffled against her uniform. Thank you. Her throat closed. She placed a trembling hand on his back, eyes burning. For once, words failed her. Raptor 1's voice came again, this time over loudspeakers from the tarmac. Falcon 21, you brought them home. Respect. The other pilots saluted from their cockpits as they taxied past, their canopies gleaming under the floodlights. A silent tribute. Stood there, blanket draped over her shoulders, her hair damp with sweat, her body trembling from exhaustion. The world moved around her, fire crews, medics, commanders rushing in, but she was still. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel it fully. Pride, pain, relief. And a question she wasn't ready to answer. Who was she now? A captain, a soldier, Falcon 21 reborn, or just a woman who refused to quit when 200 souls needed her? The desert wind whispered around her, carrying the echoes of engines fatting into silence. She closed her eyes, and for just a heartbeat she let herself breathe. How do you return to silence after the sky itself has screamed with you? The tarmac glowed under floodlights, a theater of chaos and relief. Fire crews sprayed the smoldering undercarriage, foam hissing as it blanketed sparks. Ambulances idled nearby, medics rushing to check passengers huddled in silver blankets. Soldiers from Stood scattered along the perimeter, weapons lowered, eyes locked on the wreck that had somehow landed against every odd. 200 passengers survived. 200 stories, all tethered to one name now, Captain Keene. But she stood apart from the noise. Wrapped in a blanket, her hair damp with sweat, she stood at the edge of the tarmac, watching the broken jet. Her body trembled, exhaustion cutting deeper than she wanted to admit. Alex stood nearby, fielding questions from officials, his voice raw, his hands still shaking. He kept glancing at her, as if unsure she was even real. For the night was far from over. The Raptors taxied closer, their canopies reflecting the floodlights. One pilot saluted through the glass, a silent gesture of respect. Then another. Froze. It had been years since she'd seen that salute aimed at her. Years since Falcon 21 meant anything beyond a memory. Her throat tightened. She raised a trembling hand, returning the salute. And for a moment, the chaos around her quieted. But peace was temporary. Sirens blared as convoys arrived. Air Force trucks, unmarked government SUVs, and finally news vans. Cameras swarmed the fences, reporters pressing against barriers, their voices rising in urgent questions. "Captain, what happened up there? Did you really call in F-22s using a military code? Who gave you authorization to use that call sign?" The words battered her like shrapnel. She kept her eyes forward, her jaw clenched. The last thing she wanted was fame. Survival was enough. But fame wasn't asking permission. Within hours, the world knew. Clips from passengers flooded social media, grainy videos of Raptors flanking the jet, audio of flight attendants shouting "brace," shaky footage of sparks as the plane skidded across the runway. Hashtags trended globally: Falcon 21, Hero Pilot, 200 souls. By dawn, headlines screamed across every screen. She saved 200 lives. The return of Falcon 21. Civilian pilot uses military code to call F-22s. The world wanted her story, wanted silence. But silence was impossible. The next morning she sat in a sterile briefing room at the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. A colonel paced the room, his face a mix of awe and suspicion. "Captain Keene," he said at last, his voice tight, "you realize what you did last night triggered half the Western defense network." Met his gaze without flinching. 200 people are alive. I'd call that a fair trigger." The colonel's lips twitched as if hiding a smile. "Your call sign hasn't been active in nearly a decade, yet the system responded. Do you know what that means?" She stayed silent. "It means Falcon 21 isn't forgotten," he said quietly. "And maybe it shouldn't be." Her chest tightened. Memories of her squadron burned behind her eyes, faces, voices, laughter in dusty hangars, screams in radios gone silent. Forgot, she had tried. She buried Falcon 21 beneath civilian life, commercial routes, the quiet routine of carrying strangers from city to city. But last night the call sign answered back. She didn't know whether to feel pride or grief. Later, Alex found her sitting alone near the hangar doors, staring at the broken jet under tarp and floodlight. He sat beside her, his hands still shaking, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. "You never told me," he said softly. She didn't answer. "You were Falcon 21, the stories I've heard them. I didn't think they were real." She exhaled slowly. Stories are always real to someone. He turned to her. "You saved them, you saved us. Last night I thought it was over 100 times, and you," his voice cracked, "you didn't quit." Her eyes stayed on the wreck. "That's the rule." He frowned. "The rule." Her lips curved faintly. "You don't quit until the wheels stop moving." Silence stretched between them. For Alex, it was the rule that had carried him through terror. For it was the rule that had carried her through war. And now through this. The world didn't let go. Days later she walked through a swarm of cameras outside her hotel, microphones thrust toward her. "Captain, what went through your mind when the hydraulics failed? Did you know the Raptors would respond to your call sign? Are you going back to the Air Force after this?" She pushed past, her face calm but her chest tight. She hadn't done this for headlines. She hadn't done this for glory. She had done it because quitting wasn't an option. But the world demanded heroes. And Keene, the woman who once buried her call sign, was suddenly theirs. One night weeks later she returned to her small house outside the city. The world was quieter there. No cameras, no questions, just silence. She sat on her porch, a cup of coffee cooling in her hands, the desert stars stretching infinite above. Her phone buzzed, a message from Alex. "Still flying. Every time I touch the yoke, I hear your voice. I don't quit until the wheels stop moving." Her chest tightened. She typed back slowly. "Good, then you're ready." She set the phone down, leaning back in the chair. The desert air was cool, the stars unblinking. For the first time in weeks, she let her body relax. She thought of the passengers, faces she would never see again, lives she had touched without knowing their names. She thought of the boy who had hugged her legs, whispering thanks. She thought of the Raptors saluting as they passed. She thought of Falcon 21. Maybe she couldn't bury it anymore. Maybe she didn't need to. Some legacies weren't meant to be forgotten. She closed her eyes, letting the night carry her back to silence. And in that silence, a truth settled. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.